not looking to replace full-time employees. We're not looking to replace temporary workers or agency workers. We're not looking to replace um, outsourced activity, but we're looking to make sure that organizations can start engaging freelancers as well, because so many individuals have said, I don't want to be owned and controlled by one company, keeping me inside the market. So as we explore that, there is a sense that there's a lot going on in the marketplace, and many of those employers who want to engage the workers just simply don't know how to, because of the inconsistencies. The way I put it is, top coder or towel mix or torque or top towel. We can pick any letter. There are 800 plus platforms out there that are engaging workers. Never mind all those people who are off platform. Never mind I'm seeing Link on the call right now, the 2,000 plus that I think he's got of organizations who are bringing different services to the freelance community that are out there. So how do we bring these pieces together? So this is kind of the matrix that we've identified in sitting down with people of, if we're going to build standards, we can't build them in 1,000 areas, but we can start defining it in an easy to use way and looking at things. So if you look at this chart, and we're going to leave this open for people to respond to and add to as we go forward, but we've kind of created this matrix that says there's two types of standards that we need to look at. One is the legal and regulatory, and that's going to change based on any jurisdiction that we're in. There are rules around how you generate an invoice, what needs to be done, can it be presented electronically or not. There are rules around tax collection and the tax liability chain that are going to be there. You have GDPR as a rule that is in place as we go through it. So there are some things that we know are absolutely legal and regulatory, and we have to be willing to address those and dive into it. Then we've got another area that we say is good practice. And good practice, candidly, we don't know all the answers to. And that's the area that we really want input from the freelance community. We don't want a corporation or a government to be making these decisions. We want the individuals who are doing the work, who are the freelancers, and we want the organizations who are engaging the freelancers to say, what are these practices that need to be there that will drive increased adoption, take friction out of the process of connecting the people with work. So we've outlined those as two areas, and then we've laid out 4 different areas that there are going to be separate kind of practices that we need to look at. One is on classification, and candidly, that's always going to come in about tax collection at its core. That's what's going to be important to every government, every organization that we're diving into. It's just kind of one of those operational realities that we need to be aware of that is unique in many countries, whether it's IR35 in the UK that we don't know if it's on or it's off. It's off. We're going through a little yo-yo right now, but also you could take AB5 in California in the US. You can go down a list of the countries who have created some kind of regulatory standard around classification. Then we have the relationship with the worker. What should be in place for a worker? We certainly have elements around tax chain liability that can come in. It can be, related to fees that are charged with the worker. As we go into areas of good practice, it could be about community development. Is there a responsibility, if you're a platform, to do anything to develop or curate the community that's a good practice? Is there anything about upskilling that we're providing? Is there anything about payment to the workers? Is there elements, Alina and I were talking before everyone joined in, we talked about free work. Are there standards that we want to look at? Crowdsourcing offers a lot of people an opportunity to try out a new skill, but it's also very few people are going to be paid for the result that's there. How do we feel about that? Do we want to start bringing some things in there? What about agency over your own information? So when someone does a background screen, because that's a requirement by the company for you to come in. Is that your property, or is it the property of the agency who did the screen? Do we want to bring some elements in there? As we go down into the client relationships, I know Albert has had some, Albert Clausen from Underpinned has been pursuing some issues around standard contracts. So that could cover insurance, it could cover indemnity, it could cover information technology security and how you access things. What can we do about streamlining the onboarding for people? Many organizations, why do I need a full background check for someone who's creating a logo for me? There's elements where that doesn't make sense. Or if I am a large corporation and I bring in McKinsey to do work, am I doing a full background screen on all of the partners who are coming in? Very few organizations are doing that. So how do we start demonstrating what is a good practice that is going to cause you as a freelancer to say, this is why I want to work with this client? I think what we want to be able to target this towards is the clients who want to be seen as freelancer friendly. What behaviors do they need to look at? And then as we get into digital ethics, again, we have some legal aspects around GDPR on one side, or things that are coming out in the EU directives that are in place in the European Commission. But what about just, the simple aspects of AI and how it's being used and what our expectations are there? This is where, to me, the advocacy element starts really entering into play and thinking about some pieces here. So these are categories that we want to pull things in. And what I'm really hoping for is, as a group, we can collectively go in here and allow you to just add anything in. Okay, there's no rules at this point. So if I'm in Mural, if you want to add a sticker in, if you go in here, whoops, sorry, not right here. If you go in where you've got this now, just take a sticky note, add it in, and put whatever you want on it. So feel free to write. And my piece would be to focus on the good practice area. If you want to zoom in or zoom out, if I'm making you feel like there's too much here and I want to see the whole chart, you could just kind of pull yourself out and drop in. I see the visiting shark moving around. Okay. Everything's anonymous that people are putting in. If you want to label your identity, feel free to. But the thought now is to just start inputting some of those ideas. And what we'll be looking to do through the Center for the Transformation of Work is start bringing this together. We're going to do a similar exercise with a variety of different groups to start inputting different things that need to be there, with the objective being in this government and regulatory aspect that we have very firm checklists that we can work through, that people can be clear on. These are the things I need to do to make sure I'm there. If you go into it, we've got the same areas. Feel free to add the text. The other thing I would encourage is, if there's a link. So one of the things that struck me is the Institute for the Future of Work has their aspect here that they've kind of laid out. They've got a good work charter that hits on a lot of these elements. It talks about access and fair pay and fair conditions and equality, dignity, autonomy, and well-being. Great information. Rather than putting all of it in there individually and trying to post it in, if you know of links that are out there, to me, I think theirs is mostly about the relationship with the worker. I thought I had it.
And just to confirm, John, the relationship with the worker, it's how companies working with freelancer, or how freelancer operating on the platform, for example?
If someone is an intermediary and they have a relationship with the worker, then that's what we're looking towards. So if someone is engaging, if there's a third party engaging the worker, if you are completely independent and you're there and you're running your own business, it might be about the things that you would like to have available. So, what can make it easier for me as a worker? So I'm gonna All gonna. So again, if you want to just pop a link in, as opposed to keying in individual information. But the whole objective that we'd like to do is to just start gathering some elements of what becomes important. Yeah, we see payment terms being added in, standardized contracts. One of the things that we've heard, real consistently is the expectation around indemnification is a real challenge in contracts that are there. So can we come up with some standards that will allow people to say, okay, it's easier for me to engage people if we have that. Payment enforcement, I love seeing that. I want to open it. Are there questions? Are there feedback? Do you think I'm nuts to try to pursue this with the group? I'm interested in some reaction. Love the reference to IP rights as a big element. Who has that?
I put that, yeah, with a question mark, because probably not related to everyone, but thinking about classification, you did mention it tax related.
Yeah.
But well, we discussed that also classification of a freelancer as such is a big issue. So
and I'll share, we have CXC is one of the members of the Center for the Transformation of Work, and they're working with us to help define kind of this checklist of the legal and regulatory. So that's why I'm not as worried about kind of running through that. They are an organization, one of the lines of business that they have is as an employer of record. And so for the companies who are engaging a worker in a different geography, they help those companies ensure that they do it in a legal and compliant way so that they don't end up in the newspaper for the wrong reasons. And so having that checklist is one of the things that they're helping us work our way through to make sure we have that.
yeah, Link is asking, where should we add an NDA that protects clients and workers from going out and working with one another outside the platform or creating mechanism to complete after the work is completed?
So let's put it in NDA standards. So it's NDA, that can be a data privacy.
Yeah, thanks, Link. I added your second comment too. Relationship with the worker. Okay. Oops. Yeah.
And I just put in the reference to no fees charged for access to opportunity. This is something that the International Labor Organization, it's Convention 181, that has been adopted in over 100 countries. That's one of their standards, is that you don't charge fees for access to opportunity. Now, charging fees for services rendered, different side of things. So some people have asked, And again, I'm going into a platform now. Upwork is very transparent. They charge 20% of your earnings is the fee that they charge out for using their platform to access their client base and to go through things. But that's for the services. You have no fee charge for being a member of Upwork and seeing the opportunities and having the opportunity to compete for the work. So that's kind of the fine line that's in there as we look at how that regulation is set up today. Yeah, subcontracting, a real big one that's there. You have many countries, Japan does not allow it legally to have any subcontracting mixed in. All of the relations, you can't have you can't subcontract your work out. The client has to have the direct relationship of what's there.
Yeah, you did mention that, just putting it in here.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
When it comes to a freelance worker working with, say, Top Coder, and then they switch over and work for like Fiverr, one of the other platforms, and so they build themselves a portfolio, are there any rules right now that kind of go against them having, say, a website all their own where they share that I've done work for Top Coder and some of the specifics of those tasks, or do they just have to limit it to I worked for Top Coder, or I worked at Top Coder, and not say any of the projects because of proprietary information?
So I think we're getting into something is, the agents, the way I would describe that, Link, is who has agency over their information. So the list of your assignments. Sorry, I'm just going to kind of key it in. What can I share? What can I not share? On that, can you use it from a marketing perspective, but also what strikes me in your reference of I've changed platforms, many of the platform algorithms right now are structured to put people at the top based on the amount of earnings that they've had with that platform. So the need to start over again, if you change platforms, you're going to show up at the bottom of the algorithm list if it's a new platform for you. So there's I'm going down to the digital ethics area. There's an element of where someone, the way the ILO put it is algorithmic accountability is an element in here. Mm-hmm. And Link, I think the piece I'd maybe offer most is these aren't necessarily answers right now. We're at a stage of gathering what are the things that we need to think about. And so don't worry if it's not in the perfect column or the perfect box for what's there. Let's start gathering these ideas of things that we need to explore. And that's the role, candidly, that we'll do the filtering and try to organize and be able to come back to the community as a whole and say, how do we feel about this before we declare a standard? But right now, I'd say we're in the brainstorming stage, so feel free to put things in. Link, will be coming back to you and your advocacy group for those who don't know or weren't on his presentation earlier this week. Link is an expert in diversity, equity, inclusion, or I heard it today listed as IDEA. It was inclusion, diversity, equity, and advocacy as 4 areas. And Link leads the advocacy work stream for the Center for the Transformation of Work. So how do we start kind of gathering all of this and bringing it through?
Is that a rhetorical question, or would you like me to say that now?
Chime in, go.
In the words of one of my favorite professors, Michael Tishman, when I asked him over a year ago, how do we start to build in some of this and gather the voice of freelancers? His response was to basically build a crowd around the idea of advocacy. So as we look at advocacy, you know, in the past, it kind of tends to be the squeaky wheel that stops progress and says, hey, wait a minute, what about these people? You know, these people aren't included. And then you stop and you go back and try and figure out how to include those people or that policy or whatnot. And so with today's world of advocacy and the future of work, advocacy looks at not just the underrepresented worker, but all types of workers and what causes them to be underrepresented. So this may go beyond race and gender to things like economic stability or, you know, family status or age. I mean, it could include all kinds of things. And so when we look at advocacy for the Center for the Transformation of Work, it's about attracting all types of workers to share their experiences. And we host monthly community calls to bring people together to say it's not just one person that's saying that this is a problem. Now we can say that it's several people that are having this problem and it's something that we need to address. So it's building a crowd around those issues to highlight those issues and then turn around and get feedback from those same people on how we can fix it. And align that with policy and best practices and things of that nature. So a lot goes into play rather than just making things more equal. It's about, you know, what are all the standards out there and what might work best for that region or that area or that type of worker, and that not all policies are created the same. So I hope that answers that, John, a little bit.
That's great, thank you. And if you want to drop a URL into the chat, if anyone wants to join the advocacy group or participate in those conversations, always encourage that.
Absolutely. You can join as an individual member at Center for the Transformation of Work. And then we meet for the advocacy community every 3rd Tuesday. And we would love to have more people on that call. So yeah, please join as an individual member. Make sure you check the advocacy box and we'll send you an invite.
Cool. If there's an element of discomfort as you're going through, you know, my encouragement is we're going to leave this document open and just let people add in. If there are people you're talking to that say, hey, there's something I want to dive into deeper. If there's an article you saw that just stood out and said, wow, I think they hit something good on this, drop a URL into it so that we can continue to explore. And if we get mural fixed and we find that there's a different asynchronous way for us to do this collaboration, we'll certainly add that in and get it out to people and move and transport things around. But I think the driver for me is that I don't want an individual to create standards. Standards are about a community saying, this is what's important, this is what will enable it. But what we know, and the example was when the Ukraine war began, or Russia's invasion of the Ukraine began, what we saw is a lot of companies standing up and doing some really unique things. I think Upwork was the first who said, hey, we're going to kind of follow that Airbnb model that they had created and allow people to create assignments that pay you for just checking in. Tell me you're still alive. And it was almost a charity element that was out there. We saw other organizations make bold statements about payment for people and giving them the freedom to be paid in whatever currency they wanted. We saw other organizations say, we're going to move you to the top of our list in the search to do some things. And what we found was all of these good ideas were being popped up individually in all different places, but no one could kind of bring them together. And that's what we feel like there needs to be. Alina, you've talked about John Younger, and I know he's talked to this group as a whole, but John talks about the need for there to be kind of a town square where people can talk about all of these elements, and we want to make sure that that's there. And whether that's CTW or it's freelancer business community that Alina's created, it's about collaborating and not competing to control or own anything in here. It's about us working together to make sure that there are opportunities for people to work the way that they want to work, and starting to gather those things that make it easier for people to do that.
Yeah, indeed, John, that's very nicely said. We do see sometimes communities are seeing competition of some sort, which I don't understand, because there is so much. I mean, there's work for everyone, first of all, and secondly, the bigger we are all together, the better it is for freelance economy in general.
100%.
Yeah, I was reminded actually to ask you, because John Younger said we need to ask you one thing, and specifically he said we need to check with you what is Trusted Platform Initiative.
Oh, so yeah, this is exciting. So we will be launching at our next CTW call. Many people may be familiar with like Edelman's Trust Barometer. One of the things, think of the hiring process. I'm at so I started your month in London. Today I'm in Las Vegas. I'm with the American Staffing Association. And we were talking about the hiring process, which I just believe is fatally flawed right now. But why do we interview people? It's because we lack trust. Someone presents you a CV or kind of a description of their services, and now I've got to vet it. I'm not sure I believe that you do what you say you do. So there is a break in trust is one of the core elements that creates a lot of the friction in engaging people into work opportunity. And so when we look at the platforms in the marketplace, a lot of the clients that we've talked to, so the enterprise businesses say, I don't know which platform does what. I don't know if I can trust them to do this work. If I'm going to send this work out, what's going to happen? And so we've worked very closely with John Younger to develop a survey that we're going to be putting out. We've got a series of different platforms. So it's about which platforms can be trusted. And the first piece we're going to is going to be to the clients. So we're going to the enterprise clients, and they're going to rate the platforms. So we're asking the platforms to send a link to their customers. So we don't need the list of the customers. We understand a lot of people feel precious about who their customers are and they don't want to go out. But we're going to gather some information from the customers of who do they trust, which platforms do they trust, and in what areas, to gather that information and then be able to recognize those platforms that are most trusted and begin that process of helping companies better understand who they should be working with and where they can go to make things happen. We haven't hit that, Alina, on all of the freelancers. So we are specifically focused on the platform side of things right now with that, but we want to continue to explore. The next piece will be to get feedback from the freelancers who have engaged with platforms. Which platforms do they trust? And make sure that we're gathering that input. And then we actually want to get it from the freelancer on the clients, because many of the end clients, they want to be known as freelancer friendly environments, but are they really? You know, if your onboarding process takes 2 weeks, how do you feel about that? So we're using trust as the driver to start gathering that information. And the first wave will be on platforms and which of their clients, getting the feedback from enterprise businesses on which platforms they trust the most.